Hello and welcome to our July 24th, 2026 Freshet Friday podcast. The news in our community continues to be dominated by the aftermath of that major apartment fire in Westminster 2 weeks ago, and we'll hear a lot more about how so many people across the region have come together to help fire victims. We'll also talk about a mystery park purchase in Port Moody, how the field of candidates for this fall's local election continues to grow, why bears should not be eating candy in the Tri-Cities, the need for heat relief, and how the sentencing of a man who killed a 15-year-old Coquitlam student has resulted in the convicted man being jailed for at least the next 13 years. And that's just the start. I'm your host, Jeff Wheelwright, and with me on the podcast this week are the veteran journalists and founders of Freshet News, Mario Bartel, Teresa McManus, Janice Clue, and Cornelia Naylor, with their take on all of these happenings in Burnaby, New Westminster, and the Tri-Cities. Welcome back, team.
Hey, Jeff.
Well, let's start with the update to that fire in New Westminster, Teresa. I know you've been keeping a very close eye on this story and had a major update in yesterday's print edition of Freshet News. What's the latest?
Yeah, well, on Monday, the city's emergency support services team, they reopened the reception center up at Century House. And so in addition to trying to help those folks in terms of some of the supports they might need, the folks from US Neighborhood House were also there, and they came bearing money and gift cards, and lots of them. So in the aftermath of this fire, there was an outpouring of support. And Mary Trentadue, the executive director of US Neighborhood House, tells me that as of Monday, they had raised $115,000 in cash. And that was through the original GoFundMe campaign that a local resident had started, as well as e-transfers to Neighborhood House and cash donations. And then on top of that, they also received $26,000 in gift cards. So while city officials were busy meeting with the displaced tenants on Monday, Neighborhood House started giving out those donations. And Mary said that people were just immensely grateful for the outpouring of support. And she said they were just really being blown away. At the same time that they were getting those funds, which she did point out that as much as $115,000 sounds like an awful lot of money, when it's being distributed, between tenants of 42 units in that one building, it isn't a tremendous amount of money given that they've lost everything. I should also note that some of the donations will also be going to help some of the tenant or residents of Hillcroft. Now, that's the building that's next door. It's facing 10th Street. And it also suffered significant damage in this. And that was due to water from the crews fighting that fire for basically 24 hours. And so when I was talking to Mary, she said that they're providing residents of that building on the first floor with financial contributions and gift cards because the first floor of the units in that building could be out of commission for quite some time. She said that it's very likely that there won't be anything salvageable in those first floor units. The folks on the second and the third floor of that building will be getting gift cards. They will be able to get back in sooner. I don't have a date on that. When I did go by the site yesterday, there was somebody stationed there, and from what I was told, was they were starting to allow people to go in and maybe get a few things on the second and third floor. So there's that happening. If you do go by the site, you will see that there is posters about all the missing cats. It's really, really quite sad. Now, I did talk to Fire Chief Jeff Gill, and he says that there have been concerns about a couple of issues related to this site. One of them relates to pets. A lot of folks just wanted to get onto that site and try to find pets. And he says it is just not possible. It's unsafe. He said that when today's furnishings and furniture, there's a lot of plastics in there. And so when that burns, it's very toxic. And so he said getting in there would be very dangerous. And that's just not something they can allow. In addition, he said that there's like voids within the structure. And says it's too dangerous even for firefighters to get onto that site right now. But the city has teamed up with the animal services folks are working with VOCRA and with the support of the fire service to put food out. And they've got some traps set up and they've got some cameras set up. And so the hope is that they'll be able to potentially rescue any of the cats that may have survived the fire and have just gotten, scared and ran away, but often they will come back to their homes, they say. So, yeah, so it's been a busy week. There's a lot of different moving pieces to this. I've talked to MLA Jennifer Whiteside and the folks at the Senior Services Society. They're all helping in terms of trying to find accommodations for these folks that have been displaced. Some people have found homes, some are staying with friends, and I am still trying to get sort of some updated information as to how many folks have actually been placed in new homes. But there's also a lot of folks in the community who are asking about donating furniture and things like that. And Neighborhood House says they're just not in a position to collect that information or collect those goods. But they sort of have a bit of a list going if they can possibly connect people at some point. There's a lot of groups on Facebook. There's folks are really trying to mobilize and support in terms of finding, there's someone that's going around and looking for rent signs in the city that they're providing out there as information, and also trying to compile a place where folks may be able to support buy furniture and that sort of thing.
So what would be your advice for anybody who wants to help?
Well, when I talked to Mary Trentadue from Neighborhood House, she said they are still accepting donations and they will take e-transfers for the residents, and they've given out the first allocation of funds that they had collected. But she said, this is nowhere near enough for what these folks are going to need. So she said that they will still accept donations and they will distribute those in a second round as it dwindles down.
And to make those donations, they go to the New Westminster Neighborhood House website?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that, Teresa. Next up, we have a story from Janice about bears in the Tri-Cities, a story that comes with some amazing video that you shared with everyone on social media. Give us a scoop, Janice.
Yeah, Jeff, I was out walking on Monday night by the Coquitlam River and caught a bear and it was wandering around looking for food. And sure enough, it found a candy wrapper. I took a video and this generated some reaction on Facebook. Then I did some digging and found out that the Tri-Cities Bear Aware is raising the alarm about the number of juvenile bears that are around right now. And July is a busy month for the bears. They're out and about and they're resting during the day because it's so warm right now, and they're out at night and they're looking for food. And Tri-Cities Bear Aware on Facebook, they're a community group. They posted a photo from Castlegar, and it was a picture of bear scat, and it contained human garbage like the candy wrapper. Went right through the bear. And they said once a bear discovers an easy food source, it's likely to return again and again. This increases the risk of human-bear conflicts, property damage, and too often negative outcomes for bears. Just want to remind residents of the Tri-Cities that the bears are out, and if you feed them intentionally or unintentionally, it's $500 fine. So the bears are out.
Very wise advice, Janice. Well, from bears to the unbearable weight of civic elections, which are bearing down on us fast. Okay, that's enough bears. I know that we just had some new candidate announcements across the region this week. Who wants to kick this off?
I'll start. In the Tri-Cities, currently we have 26 candidates running for civic and school board office. We've had 4 announced in the past week, and they are all for school board. Natalie Wang is running for Coquitlam School Board. Shara Kazi, also for Coquitlam School Board. And in Port Coquitlam, Michael Thomas, the chair, and trustee Christine Pollock want to return to the board.
And fantastic. And are there any issues that seem to be surfacing in common across all of these, or are they the usual issues we've been hearing a lot about?
There is nothing new that is being raised by any candidate at this time.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, a couple more people in Port Moody have stepped up. One of particular note is former councillor Steve Milani has announced he's going to run as an independent candidate. He ran for mayor in the last civic election and lost to Megan Lottie by about 1,000 votes. He's advocating for more responsible growth, and I know Kyle Center has been a particular area of interest for him. We've also had another candidate to join the Port Moody Voice, the nascent political party that's formed in Port Moody behind their mayor candidate Haven Lerbecki, who's currently a councillor in the city. Alexander Chan, she's stepped up as the third candidate running under the Voice banner.
Fantastic. Any updates from you, Cornelia, or Teresa?
Take it away, Teresa.
I think, as I mentioned last week, there's a new political party in town, Be Good New West, and they had their launch party last week. But aside from that, the candidates are all out there. They're all door knocking. They're all issuing press releases and the like, but no new candidates so far.
Great. Well, from the heat of electoral competition to the heat that we've been dealing with just by walking out the front door, I wanted to talk a bit about some strategies that some of our municipalities have for helping people deal with that heat. And Teresa, I know you've got a story about some work that New West is doing to try and help residents.
The City of New Westminster has been taking a number of actions to sort of deal with the heat issue in New West. And again, part of that is just in response to the heat dome deaths of 2021. And New West had more deaths per capita than any other city in BC. And so the latest initiative that's coming up is, I think probably sometime next week, the city's going to be starting to distribute what they're calling Stay Cool kits. And this is for tenants in apartment buildings in New Westminster. And I spoke to Karen Johnson. She's the city's manager of climate action. And she says it's going to be a very simple process. Tenants can either fill out an online application, or they can even make a phone call to City Hall if that's easier. And then there's going to be lots of pickup locations across the city. And so this is something that tenants can use to help them stay cool. It doesn't require any permission from a landlord, and there would be no cost to them. And so what these kits will have is it's an insulated bag, and there's going to be a cooling towel in there, digital room thermometer, reusable wearable ice packs, some misters. It's also going to have a map of cooling facilities in New West, an extreme heat guide, and some other information type pieces. And so, the idea is that not everyone is comfortable going to a cooling center. And so the city wanted to have something that they could provide to residents of these apartment buildings that would provide immediate cooling when a building gets really, really hot. And so that's they're going to start distributing those as soon as they arrive. I think there's been a couple of delays in procurement, but they're coming.
Fantastic. Of course, one way to cool off from the heat comes from swimming. But to do that, you first need to know how to swim. But Cornelia, you have a story about how Burnaby wants to help everyone in the province to do just that. So why don't you take us on a little dip into this one?
Well, they're starting with their own municipality. This was an update that came to the city's Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee meeting last week. It was an update on the City of Burnaby's Learn to Swim pilot program, which is actually a partnership with the Burnaby School District. Its goal is to make sure that every grade 5 student in the district gets a chance to develop essential swimming and water safety skills. This idea was conceived in February 2023 when council directed staff to explore swim program partnership with the school district, a pilot program that sees 8 30-minute lessons over 4 weeks to various schools. So far, in early 2026, 248 grade 5 students from 4 schools have participated, and more schools are expected to participate in the fall. Councillor Danielle Tetro, who chairs the committee, said that one of the highlights for him was the fact that many of the students participating had not been in a swim program and likely wouldn't be after, getting older than grade 5. So that was really important to him. He was, in fact, the person who put forward the motion to direct staff to do this. He said that he's a big fan of the pilot program. So far, challenges have been lifeguard and instructor availability, scheduling conflicts with school lunch periods and dismissal times, and also limited pool space, interfering with other aquafit and lane swimming programs. So far, the city in 2025 approved $206,000, and this year, as part of the budget discussions, they approved $412,000. So it's a tidy sum. And one of the things that Daniel Tetro said was that the ultimate goal is to convince the province to help fund this. So he said meetings have already been arranged with ministers at September's Union of BC Municipalities Convention, so the UBCM. He thinks it's important, and statistics coming from the BC Coroner Service this month would seem to bear him out. Preliminary data for 2026 shows that there have been 40 accidental drowning deaths in British Columbia between May 1st and July 16. That's 40. That's compared to 26 deaths in the same period last year. So there's definitely a spike in drownings. People knowing how to swim is an important life skill, as Tetro said. So yeah, we'll see if the province decides to fund it.
I'll just dive in here for a moment, Jeff. Linnea Grace, she's the Executive Director of the Life Saving Society of BC. She was just at New Westminster City Council, and they proclaimed July 19th to 25th as National Drowning Prevention Week. The City of Port Coquitlam and the Village of Belcarra have also done that, as well as other BC municipalities. And they were again highlighting just that point that there is a real rise. They called it alarming in terms of the number of drownings. And the Life Saving Society is actually going to be at the UBCM, as Cornelia mentioned, and they will be advocating that there's more efforts done to try to deal with this issue.
That's fantastic, and a really important issue to address, I think. Well, now we'll turn from swimming to solving the $10 million mystery surrounding park purchase plans in Port Moody. Mario, I know you're on this case. Where does it lead?
Well, nobody really knows yet. It started as what looked like just a basic procedural item on the agenda of council last week. Council wanting to have permission to shift almost $10 million from the Development Cost Charge Reserve Fund to some other financial mechanism, so in preparation for purchasing parkland for about $10 million. I think that the price mentioned was about $9.95 million. Port Moody has set aside a certain amount of its DCC reserve fund specifically for the purposes of acquiring parkland. Out of fund that, it's about $12.3 million. So this is a pretty sizable chunk of that available money. The city's has made the acquisition of parkland a priority, given some of the growth that's happening and is anticipated to happen. So what started out as a simple procedural note in the agenda turned into quite a discussion about transparency and closed council meetings and how decisions are made. It was Councillor Havenbiller-Becky that lit the spark on that discussion. She was questioning, why has there been no consultation? I mean, and those of us who've covered council know that it's financial decisions, how when it comes to real estate and things like that are often done behind closed doors, and we don't find out what is going on until the announcement is made and it comes out of closed. So, but it was Rebecca's contention that something like this should have some more public exposure, so that the residents the taxpayers can decide for themselves whether this is a worthy acquisition. Part of her contention was a similar deal that went down a couple of years ago, where the city bought 2 residential properties across from Kyle Park, and paid It's about almost $6 million for 2 homes, and I looked into their assessed value, and it was almost twice their assessed value. Of course, in 2024, the real estate market was riding pretty high, and it bought those homes specifically for the purposes of eventually expanding Kyle Park. Of course, a little while ago, the city announced sort of its initial plans for the Kyle Center, which is attached to Kyle Park. So it does need some more space there. Currently, I believe the city's renting those houses out. They've become landlords of people who live in those houses. But yeah, it was an interesting discussion as to what obligation is on a city to make its real estate things known. Of course, the city's financial guy, Paul Rockwood, said, well, we have to be able to do these things behind closed doors because the negotiation is sensitive. You don't want to let the cat out of the bag and then suddenly the seller is going to ask for more money or realize maybe the market's a little more lively than they think it is. So yeah, we're all just sort of waiting to see where exactly this parkland acquisition is. There's 3 areas that the city has targeted in its OCP. That is expansion of Kyle Park, also Chip Kerr Park, and also Rocky Point Park. So as one councillor, Kyla Knowles, pointed out, it's a pretty good chance it's going to be in one of those, related to one of those areas, but we're all waiting to see. Paul Rockwood said it might be a couple of weeks before all the T's are crossed and I's dotted, and they can let the city know where this new parkland will show up.
Ooh.
And is there a process in terms of like public hearings or advisories for residents to comment on that before the deal goes through? Or
no, that was exactly Haven Lerbecki's point. Is this happens and the first residents know of it is when it's announced.
Okay, that is very interesting to know. Thank you for that, Mario. Well, this week also saw the sentencing of a man who killed a 15-year-old Coquitlam student. Janice, do you want to bring us up to date on that story?
This is the saddest story, Jeff. We covered this, Mario and I covered this when we worked for the Tri-City News. I believe, Mario, you went to the funeral of this young man. His name is Alfred Wong. He was a student, 15-year-old student at Pine Tree Secondary. He was out for dinner with his family and got caught in the crossfires, literally, of a gang shootout. He was shot in the heart while he was traveling in the back of his parents' car. So it was a total freak accident. And anyway, the person who shot him, his name is Kane Carter. He was involved in this gang. And he was found guilty of second-degree murder of Alfred Wong, as well as Kevin Whiteside, who was 23 years old. This happened in 2018. It's just being resolved now. What has happened is the judge has come down with a sentencing of 17 years for Kane Carter. He is getting time served, so he's not eligible for parole for another 13 years. This was incredibly heartbreaking for the family. Obviously, he's 15-year-old. He swam for our local swim club. He was upstanding in his church, and this is what's happening.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very sad story. Thank you for that, Janice. Well, and I want to now turn to our Freshet 911, where we look at interactions with the emergency services. And I think the first story we have is about a Quebec murder suspect arrested in Burnaby.
That's right, Jeff. This one came to us from the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit, which is kind of a crazy name for BC's anti-gang team. They announced this week that the arrest of a Quebec murder suspect in Burnaby last week, Lee Van Smath Germain, was wanted on an outstanding warrant in connection to a May 11th, 2022 homicide of Sébastien Giroux in Montreal. In January, 3 men, including Germain, were charged in connection with the killing. 2 were arrested, but Germain remained at large. So investigators then with the Montreal Police Service determined that he had ties to BC. So they reached out to the CFSEU for help. And that team, with help from the Montreal Police Service and the Metro Vancouver Transit Police, launched an investigation and located him. And on July 15th, they executed a search warrant at a Burnaby residence where he was located and arrested without incident. He was transported to Burnaby RCMP cells and was to remain in custody before being sent back to Quebec to face the murder charge.
Wow. I understand you have a couple of other stories.
I do. One that crosses the Burnaby-Coquitlam border. Last Thursday, Coquitlam RCMP reminded anyone experiencing a mental health crisis that help is available, even if it's just in the form of a 911 call or a visit to a local hospital. And this came after an incident at a Coquitlam overpass earlier this month. At about 11 p.m. on July 7th, off-duty Burnaby RCMP officer spotted a woman in distress on the United Boulevard overpass above busy low-heat highway. The officer notified Coquitlam RCMP because that's their jurisdiction. He waited on scene. Coquitlam RCMP and the off-duty officer used de-escalation techniques and eventually were able to convince the emotionally despondent and visibly distressed woman, it was a 31-year-old woman, to come down from the railing. She was then taken to hospital. So some of the supports that they listed for people in distress were the BC Suicide Prevention and Intervention Line, National Suicide Crisis Helpline, BC Mental Health and Crisis Response, and the British Columbia Help Starts Here website. And then another one was kind of busy in Burnaby a little bit in terms of news releases. In a Burnaby RCMP news release this week, we heard about a knife point robbery at a gas station at Lougheed Highway and Sperling Avenue at about 7:19 a.m. on July 17th. That's a Friday. They got a report of a robbery that had just happened at the Chevron there, and officers flooded the area, but the man had escaped on foot and then on a bicycle. The victim gave a detailed description, though, and police caught up to the man within 10 minutes. The police were quite proud of this. Within 10 minutes of the report going out, they had caught up with this man. He slipped on some grass just beside Lougheed Highway, and they didn't need the police dog, which was en route, but they didn't need it. They also recovered the stolen goods, which included cigarettes, gift cards, and food. And now this 40-year-old Burnaby resident is facing charges, including robbery, uttering threats, possession of a weapon, and breach of probation. So apparently the man was on probation.
Thank you for that. Teresa, you mentioned that you had some things going on at the New Westminster Police Board.
First off, there was a police call that came in on Monday here in New West. It was about 2:00, and there was what police describe as a mid-size roll-off bin truck was traveling down Holmes Street, and it did not stop at the intersection of East Columbia and Holmes. Fortunately, the driver was not seriously injured in this. I've heard reports that he may have jumped out of the vehicle, but I'm still working to confirm that with the police department. Folks may remember that this is not the first time that this has happened. Holmes Street is basically the last point there beside Hume Park by the border of Burnaby. It's very, very steep. There have been actually fatalities there when vehicles have gone through that intersection. So in this case, fortunately, there was no serious injuries. And then the other thing that was happening this week was the New Westminster Police Board did meet. I'll have some stories coming out about that. One of them is about the police budget. It was the first meeting that the public budget the budget was made public. And so there will be more coming forward on that. And then there was also, within that report was some crime stats. And I'll be following up with that as well. But I will just highlight that Chief Constable Paul Hyland had a report in there that showed that quite a number of crime categories in New Westminster are actually on the downward trend. He offered a bit of an explanation about that. Some of that is increased enforcement. They've received some provincial funding to help, step up patrols. In the past, they've had some vacancies, but he says that their recruitment staff have done a great job of filling positions with experienced and new rookie recruits. He said those numbers could change, but certainly both in the downtown specifically and in the city, he did highlight that there was quite a number of categories where crime has dropped. And then he did note, importantly, there were no homicides, attempted homicides, or aggravated assaults. Domestic violence is up a little bit, and family violence is up, I think, 29%. But it was something that I hadn't really heard before, but both the chief and police board member commented that in some ways seeing increases in those incidents is not necessarily a terrible thing, because it may just mean that people are feeling more comfortable coming forward and reporting those cases. It sounds like the police department's staff have been really trying to make efforts to let community members know that they have a trauma-informed process for dealing with those cases, because they are very sensitive. And so their hope is that's what is behind those increases.
Sounds like there's some good insights to be gained from digging in more deeply on those.
Absolutely.
All right, now I'm going to turn to what's coming up, Janice.
I mean, you would think we'd be all FIFA'd out, but we're not. I mean, if we get enough soccer, we're going to go to Vancouver Rise game on Saturday. It's at 1:00. They're facing Halifax at the Swangard Stadium, and they're returning to Swangard on the 29th. That's the Wednesday, and then facing Montreal, and that's a 7 p.m. game. On Saturday and Sunday, we've got Caribbean Days in Coquitlam. This is hosted by the Trinidad and Tobago Cultural Society of BC, and it's on all day, Saturday and Sunday. Burnaby Pride is also on Saturday, and that is taking place at Civic Square from 3 to 7. And on Sunday, we've got the 12th Street Fest. This is a free annual festival taking place in New Westminster from 8th to 6th Avenues. It's a free festival running from 11 to 5. And then, of course, at Rocky Point Park on Sunday, we've got our friend George Walzer, who programmed all the music for Ribfest, and he's coming back with the Summer Sundays. And the Sunday show is going to be at 2:00, and the performer is called R&B Conspiracy.
Fantastic. Sounds like a busy week ahead.
Jeff, can I just jump in here for a second about an event that's happening next week before Freshet Friday returns? It's on Thursday, July 30th, and it's the New Westminster Senior A Salmon Bellies. They're playing the Victoria Shamrocks at Queen's Park Arena at 7:00. And it is the seniors team's last regular scheduled game of the season. But even in some ways more special than that, it's also the 100th birthday of Jack Fulton. And so for anybody who's familiar with lacrosse in the region, they probably know of Jack Fulton. He's known as Mr. Salmon Belly. He's the grandfather of lacrosse, or the godfather of lacrosse for many folks. Jack never played lacrosse, but he has been involved with the organization since I think the 1950s. And it is his actual 100th birthday. He will be in the arena. And Ray Porcelato, the GM of the Salmon Bellies, has confirmed that there will be a singing of a happy birthday to Jack before the game. The only other time I've ever seen this done was when it was Shaggy's birthday. So I did get an email from a community member who said, I don't need to tell you what Jack has meant to the Salmon Bellies over the past 50 plus years. And it would be nice to have the old barn full of Salmon Belly fans there to sing happy birthday. And could you please pass this along to all of your readers? So I am passing it along. And if anybody wants to get out there and sing happy birthday to Jack, it would be appreciated by the Bellies family.
That's wonderful. And a great answer to that question of what you need for a long life is clearly to be a Salmon Bellies fan.
I shall live a long time.
Exactly, Teresa. It's happening for you. Speaking of sports, Mario, I saw you had a great story about a Port Coquitlam pitcher who is signed with the New York Yankees.
Yeah, most high school grads who graduated in June would probably be spending a couple of months before they head off to new adventures in September at college or university or wherever. Enjoying the summer weather, maybe working a part-time job, earning a few bucks, maybe doing some traveling. But Sean Duncan just graduated Terry Fox Secondary. He signed a $2.5 million contract with the New York Yankees. He's an 18-year-old pitcher, left-hander, was pretty highly regarded. He was basically considered the top prospect coming out of Canada in all the scouting reports. And he was, the week prior to his signing last weekend, he was drafted in the second round by the Yankees. And in baseball, they sort of have, there's years and years of statistics with baseball, and they're able to project what these draft picks could potentially earn based upon previous years and the kind of money that was signed by players who were drafted in a similar position. And his rating was about $1.5 million. So he did really well. But the interesting twist to this story is he's got a hard fastball. He can pitch like 95 miles an hour, which is very rare at that age. He's also blown out his arm. He was injured this spring playing for Canada's junior national team. They were playing a bit of a series of games down in the Dominican Republic, and he hurt his arm and had Tommy John surgery. And anyone who knows has come across that terminology. It's a pretty serious operation where basically doctors rebuild your shoulder from parts elsewhere in your body, and named after the one-time Los Angeles Dodger pitcher Tommy John, who was the first to undergo this surgery. And he had a bit of a career afterwards, so it's known to be successful. It's become more and more common. You don't often see it in 18-year-olds. So yeah, the interesting thing was, the Yankees persevered. They think they've got a project on their hands. I mean, an 18-year-old kid, it'll take him a few years before he ever gets to the major leagues, but on his photos on social media, there he is signing his contract, and he's got a big honking brace on his entire arm, and he's left-handed, so he's signing with that arm. So, good luck to him. Anyone who saw our coverage in the Tri-City News of the Coquitlam team that went down to the Little League World Series several years ago would recognize Sean's name. He was part of that team along with teammate Tim Piacentin, who was drafted last year by the Toronto Blue Jays and is now slowly working his way into their very early farm system and finding what it is to be a professional ball player. So yeah, a couple local kids making a bit of a splash in professional baseball.
Oh, that is exciting. Well, now I'm going to turn to our favorite stories of the week. And Janice, I'll start with you. What's your favorite story this week?
That is my favorite story of the week. Sean Duncan is incredible. 6'3". He pitches left, and he has done so well. I can tell you my kids played ball with him in the Coquitlam Little League, so there is hope for us all as parents. This is the best story of the week, in my opinion.
That's quite a recommendation. How about you, Cornelia?
Well, this is my favorite story of the week. I'm going to be inward looking, is a story that you'll find in Thursday's print edition. This has been a long time coming, this story. It's a story about Highway 1. Anybody who's worked with me over the last, almost decade knows that I've been working on this story on and off. It's basically a story about how Highway 1 and the history of its construction, how it divided Burnaby in half. It cuts Burnaby roughly in half from North Road to the Grandview Highway exit to Boundary Road, and what that's meant for the city and what that's meant for a neighborhood, this close-knit neighborhood called Broadview, which will be in part 2 2 weeks from now. But I'm both still super interested in this and what it's all meant, and also really happy to have the first part written and out there.
Oh, that's fantastic. A lot of exciting insight, I think, in that. How about you, Teresa?
Well, I'm going to just sort of build on that because that is one of my 2 favorite stories of the week. I just admire the amount of research that went into this. If you think it's a historical piece, but if you think, oh, this is just going to be boring, it's not boring. I mean, some
Thanks, Teresa.
No, but some of the anecdotes in there are just so entertaining. For example, here, one tractor driver that was working on the site was punched in the face by a man complaining about the noise. But then he told the Vancouver Sun that he'd already been threatened 3 weeks earlier by a drunken man with a shotgun. I mean, Cornelia's done a really great job of digging out a lot of historical information here and weaving it together in a way that's informative and entertaining. So yeah, I encourage all folks to look at that. It's a great read. And plus it's got Jim Wolfe in there, a New Westminster resident who's a former planner at the city of Burnaby. And Jim's anecdotes are always entertaining. He's very fun to listen to. And then the other piece I have is a small piece that Janice has compiled, and it was from the archives. And something, one of those things where I had no idea, and it takes, somebody to bring this stuff out. And it's about a little neighborhood in Coquitlam that apparently was visited by Hollywood heavyweights back in the day, including Clark Gable, Errol Flynn, and Elizabeth Taylor. And I had no idea. And so I just found that, as a film lover, I just found that fascinating. So
yeah, that was a delight. It was a great surprise. I really liked that. It was fun to read.
Yeah, so those are the two historical pieces, both very different, but both super entertaining.
Yeah, that's great. I love the bit about Clara Bow as well. That was great. How about you, Mario?
Well, I'll be selfish. My favorite story was also my tastiest because I spent last Friday afternoon hanging out at the Port Moody Rib Fest. It's become sort of a red letter day on the calendar now that we're back in business. It's rare that a community festival type event starts on a Friday, and so I can go down there on a regular work shift and shoot some photos and sample the goods. I stood in line 40 minutes to get a rack of ribs, but it was well worth it. And it's Friday afternoon is actually it's a very popular festival. People come from all over, especially because it's right at Rocky Point Park, right at the end, right on SkyTrain. So a lot of people will come out from other communities to enjoy live music, as Janice mentioned earlier. There's a steady program of live local bands playing on the stage, and ribs and chicken, and it's if anyone hasn't been there, it's kind of like carnies. The whole rib barbecue circus is like carnies. These people have traveled. They barnstorm across from ribbing festival to ribbing festival through the summer. Probably living out of divey motels and camper trailers, and getting all smoke filled for 3 days of the weekend, and so you have these big booths set up, and you'll have barkers out front trying to attract people to come to their booth, and they all will have their trophies out front, showing how great they are, and you just kind of take a shot at one that has the shortest line, but ends up being the slowest line, like I did. But yeah, it's kind of fun to go out and shoot some photos and have a nice tasty lunch along the way.
Oh, that sounds great. You're making me hungry, Mario. Well, my favorite story of the week was about how the community continues to come out in support of the fire victims. This is just a demonstration of, as we said last week, of how people can really come together when there is something like this. And just the range of impacts that it's had, both on the people who are directly impacted by the fire, but also on the building next door. So thank you for that, Teresa.
Can I just mention to the community that for the long weekend, the BC Day long weekend, we have Celebrate BC, 2 massive festivals coming to the Tri-Cities. And I just want to give a heads up that the Port Moody one is on Saturday, August 1st, and the Coquitlam one is on BC Day, Monday, August 3rd. And these are big events to celebrate British Columbia.
That's a great reminder, and thank you for that, Janice. Well, that wraps up another Freshet Friday podcast, but we'll be back soon. And don't forget to grab a copy of our latest print edition, which came out yesterday, and actually features a lot of information about Celebrate BC, as Janice has just highlighted. In the meantime, keep asking yourself the question, is it Freshet Friday yet? And come on back when the answer is yes. Thanks to our team for being here. Thanks for listening, and have a great weekend.